University. Tim Fields has spent 25 years working in various areas of higher education. You don't look that old. Primarily in enrollment management at Emory University, where he currently serves as the Senior Associate Dean of Undergraduate Admissions. In this role, he serves as a member of the leadership team for recruitment, evaluation, and construction of the freshman class for Emory University. And construction of the freshman class means he's part of the team that's picking all the students that are going to come to the university next fall, including students who will eventually matriculate to, I'm going to butcher this, Go Zweta Business School, and the Nell Hodgson Woodruff School of Nursing. In addition to his work in enrollment management, he has also worked in student affairs, res life, athletics, and with several federal TRIO programs at two-year state flagship and private institutions. He's also worked with several nonprofit and community-based organizations, and we have some community-based organizations in the audience tonight. All right, Bridges and Best is in the house, so thank you so much. UPS Foundation, Chicago Scholars, 100 Black Men of Atlanta, Jack Kent Cooke, National Merit Corporation, United Negro College Fund, and the Gates Foundation, and is currently a board member for Turning Dreams into Reality, TDI. He's also done work with the Division of Family and Children's Services, helping students in foster care gain access to college, as well as other community initiatives. A native of Arlington, Texas, he earned his BA in psychology from Morehouse College, MED from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and has completed all doctoral work at Georgia State University. His academic interests include HBCUs, post-secondary access of underrepresented populations, and supporting Black male initiatives. When he's not working, Timothy is a husband, a father of twins, an avid runner, a traveler, and an entrepreneur. Please help me welcome Timothy Fields to the stage.
Well, thank you for that kind introduction. I am often humbled when people are reading my introduction. I'm like, wow, I did all that in these short years. So with the time I have, want to do a couple things. I want to just share my experience at Morehouse. I want to talk about how HBCUs has, molded my life. But the most important thing I want to talk about, don't let your education get in the way of your college experience, all right? So we're going to go through that. But first, we have to have story time. And I'm going to date myself. Students, you may not know what I'm talking about, but I'm a 70s baby, and I grew up watching Mr. Rogers. So when Mr. Rogers came in from the day, he would take off and he would put on a cardigan. And so I got a cardigan right here that I'm going to throw on. Oh, it has an M on it. I wonder what the M is for. It is for Morehouse. So we're going to throw this cardigan on because we want to do story time, right? And he would kick off his hard little shoes, and he would put on some more comfortable shoes. So I'm going to throw on my Adidas, and we are going to get into it. So since we're ready for story time, this was set in Atlanta. We've been in the midst of the pandemic for the last couple years. And we were part of, admission is doing yield programs. So a yield program is where the students who have been admitted, we're trying to say, convince you, yes, you should come to Emory. And so we did this on Zoom for the past 3 years. So doing a Zoom call and, answering questions about the Black experience at Emory. So we have a panel of distinguished faculty, alumni, students, staff, talking about what their Black experience is at Emory. And so as I'm going through this, we're, answering questions, and a mother raised her hand in Zoom and said, that's a great presentation, but, which is better, Emory or an HBCU? All right, now let me put my Morehouse cardigan on. And so I gave a very politically correct answer. I said, it really comes down what the student is looking for. What type of student experience they want, what do they want to major in, did a very good job of saying it's up to the student. And then the mother says, thank you for your answer. And I said, I'm happy to follow up. The next day, the mother emails me and says, yes, I wanted to talk to you more about the difference between HBCUs and PWI, predominantly white institutions. Would you set up a time to talk to me? Absolutely. So set up a time. Mother calls and say, yeah, my son was admitted to Morehouse, but both my husband and I went to Ivy League institutions. We don't know what the historically black college university experience is like. We don't know if it's going to prepare him to have a successful career, what internships, what that looks like. So, can you talk us through it? I said, obviously, Emory has a lot of great opportunities that it can offer, but as does Morehouse. I could speak of numerous classmates that are successful in all kinds of disciplines, and, it's really up to, does he want a cultural experience of, being in the majority at a place like Morehouse, or does he want to come to a place like Emory that may have more physical resources, but I'm not going to say it's better. Okay, I appreciate that helps. Hang up the phone. Get another email. Says, Mr. Fields, we just don't know what to do. We're going to come down. We're going to come down. We want to visit Morehouse. We want to visit Emory. We want to go, really get a feel of what this is going to be like. So they come down, and this is in the midst of the pandemic, and they say, can you meet us on campus? Absolutely. So Sunday, put my mask on, come out to campus, and they're, looking around, and they say, hey, we just are really having a hard time. And then the dad pulls me aside, and he says, I don't know if my son is black enough to go to HBCU. And I look puzzled, and I says, I don't know what you mean. He says, well, he grew up in the suburbs, and, he's been in predominantly white institutions all his life. I just don't know if he's, ever been around that many black people that would be at Morehouse. It's in probably not the best neighborhood. I just don't know, how we do. And so let me step out. At this point in time, I'm becoming insulted inside because I have told them and I acknowledge that I went to Morehouse College. And what's not going to happen is me to say which is better. I'm not going to say that Morehouse is better than Emory. I'm not going to say Emory is better than Morehouse. I'm going to say they present two different type of experiences. And then the father says, a full scholarship is hard to pass up. I almost passed out. I said, what? I said, he has a full scholarship to Morehouse? And he's like, yeah. And then, so what happens is, this blue jacket is my representative. The representative went out the door. And that's when I said, I don't know what to tell you. You all know your son best. You know what will help him achieve and be successful. And I wish you all the best, but I can't, tell you that Emory is a better place than Morehouse, given the life and experiences I've had. That gentleman's at Emory, thriving, doing great. Saw him a couple weeks ago, dapped him up, said, how your parents doing? And then I walked and shook my head because I didn't get it, all right? But he went through that process. And so ultimately, he is doing well. He ended up at a great place. But I don't think the parents were open to what an HBCU can provide for their student because based upon their experience. And so as we go through this process, I just think we need to hit Control, Alt, Delete, and we need to think about what is a good college. What defines a good college? A good college is not a ranking by U.S. News World Report. A good college is not an endowment. A good college is not being at the March Madness, is not being, in a bowl game. That does not make a good college. A good college is a place that will support you. Is a place that will help you as you go throughout your college experience. And I want to emphasize experience because I don't want your experience I don't want your education to mess up your experience. Because education is what happens inside the classroom, all right? When I talk about my college experience, when these students are going to talk to you about college, they're not going to talk about what's happening in the classroom. Obviously, they go to classes. But when I think about college, I think about road trips. I think about late nights in residential halls. I think about being in the cafeteria and talking with students. I think about the day-to-day life experience that I had. So we need to, hit Control, Alt, Delete, all right? So as stated in, my introduction, I have, completed my doctoral work in higher education, and HBCUs was my specialization. And so want to, kind of give a little bit of history, all right? So there are about 100 105 HBCUs, depending upon the day, depending upon legislation. It fluctuates, but we'll just say there are 100 HBCUs in the country. Now, which was the first? Anybody from Lincoln in here? Anybody from Lincoln? Anybody from Cheney? Anybody from Cheney? All right, so they have an argument that goes back and forth about which is the first, all right? I'm not going to get into that, but just know that they both were the first two historically black college universities, all right? They're about 19. There are 100 HBCUs in 19 different states. There are a lot of HBCUs in this area. We have Bowie, we have Morgan, we have Howard, there's Townsend. There are a lot in this area, but then Coppin, excuse me. See, you got to know your crowd. You got to know your crowd. Keep me right. Keep me right. All right. All right. Don't want no problems. Don't want no problems. All right. So, just so you know, does anybody know? Tell me how many college universities are in the country? Adults can't answer. Students, how many college universities in the country? Just call out a number. Can't be wrong. 3,000. Okay. Anybody else? 10,000. 10,000. All right. Excellent. All right. So there are 4,000 college universities in the United States. Of those 4,000, about 100 are HBCUs. It's 3% of the population. But of those schools, they graduate, almost 20% of students graduated from college and university, black students graduate from college and universities. So they're doing a very great job. And of those students, they make up of 80% of black judges, 70% of black PhDs, 50% of people in stem cells, and 50% of doctors and lawyers in this country come from HBCUs, all right? So as we think, go about thinking what success looks like in going to college and what school is going to, put me in the best place, we have to think about what is the end result. And I think HBCUs speak for itself, all right? So now this is quiz time. I let y'all slide on the first one where we were talking about college and universities. But I need somebody to raise their hand, and I need somebody to tell me a famous black person, a college graduate, and where they went to school, all right? Yes. Howard University, absolutely. Yes.
Spike Lee Morehouse.
Absolutely, Spike Lee Morehouse. Yes, sir, Dr. Shields.
Dr. King Morehouse.
All right. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Kamala Harris Howard. All right. Diddy went to Howard, absolutely. Yes, sir. North Carolina A&T, Jesse Jackson, absolutely. One more. Yes.
Samuel Jackson Howard.
Samuel Jackson went to Morehouse. Absolutely, All right. Yes. Who? Chadwick Boseman went to Howard. Absolutely. All right. Hey, give yourselves a round of applause. All right. All right. So my co-author and I, Shereen, have been going around the country and we give this quiz, and usually we get Dr. King, we get Barack Obama, who went to Columbia, we get Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and then after about 5 or 6 people, it gets, I don't know. And so we do this because for the students, we want you to know that success happens at multiple places. And so if we are going to talk about Barack Obama being the first black president and applaud him for going to his Ivy League institution, Columbia, I am happy to say there's only one federal holiday named after a black person. And that's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He went to Morehouse College, all right? So if we want to talk about Ketanji Brown Jackson entering the Supreme Court, go for Harvard education, we have to talk about who paved the way, Thurgood Marshall. Now, Howard will say, oh, he went here, he went to law school. He went to Lincoln for undergrad, all right? And if we want to talk about money, a lot of people talk about success and money. You have a Robert Smith who went to Cornell, one of the richest people in the world, billionaire. But Oprah also got a B behind her name too, and she went to Tennessee State, all right? I'm a big Snowfall fan. I don't know if y'all are Snowfall fans, a little dark, but John Singleton And while he's gone, the work that he has done in film and production, his legacy will live on. But Will Packer has stepped into that shadow, and he went to Florida A&M. We don't know Kevin Hart without Will Packer, all right? Then there are 2 black female CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, all right? The young lady who went to Howard, Tashonda Brown Duckett, is the CEO of TIAA. And then you have Roz Brewer, who's the CEO of Walgreens, went to Spelman. And then finally, every morning we wake up and we see Robin Roberts, who went to Southeastern Louisiana University. But then right next to her is Michael Strahan, who went to Texas Southern, all right? So as we think about what schools are going to produce the best experiences, produce the best leaders, you can't say one is better than the other, because hopefully I'll get a cheer out of this next one, because there's only 1 to 1 of this, all right? There's nobody who did it before her. There may be somebody in here who's going to do it after her, but she went to Howard University, all right? So I want people to really think about what does success look like and how do you go about doing it, all right? Now, next quiz. Howard, let's say by popularity, we're going to use IG followers, is the most popular HBCU. Tell me the next HBCU after Howard, what is the most popular? Spelman? Okay, what else we got? Morehouse. What else we got? North Carolina A&T, Hampton. All great guesses. All great guesses, all right? But if y'all want to go fact check me, Hillman College. Hillman College has the next largest amount of followers after Howard. All right? Now, students, where's Hillman? Does anybody know where Hillman's at? Hillman does not exist. Hillman is a fictitious university that came out of the Different World, a sitcom that was in the late 80s, early 90s, that introduced a lot of people in this room to historically black colleges and universities. Yes, they have been around for over 200 years, but a lot of people were introduced to historically black colleges through Hillman College, which still has a following. And what was the great thing about Hillman? Hillman allowed people to see the diversity that happened at HBCUs. So the characters, I'll go through a couple. Ron, who has the black hat on to the far right. He was a 6-year senior. Father owned multiple car dealerships. He didn't have to worry about money. He was just at college having fun, having a great experience. In contrast to his roommate, Dwayne Wade, who's in back, who was a genius. Engineering major, full scholarship, was on his way. Everybody applauded his genius. And then the young lady in front, Whitley, who was tone deaf, who had everything in the world, who did not know what the experience was like not to have everything you want in life, who came from a lot of affluence. And then you got Kim in the yellow, who had to work 3 jobs, first-generation student, to stay in college so that she could achieve. And then later on, they introduced non-black students that went to Hillman College, which is to bust a myth. People think HBCUs are just for black people. No. One of the most diverse experiences I've had is at Morehouse College. My senior year, our SGA vice president was white. About 5 years later, the valedictorian at Morehouse College was white. You think about HBCUs, they have people from all 50 states. They have people from different socioeconomic scales. They have different people from all different places. So this idea that if I go to HBCU, everybody's going to be like me, just is not true. And so as you think about what your experience is going to be, what is it going to be defined by? Is it going to be defined by the diversity, the culture, the support, the academic programs, legacy, sports, alumni engagement? What are going to be the things that are going to define your experience? Because it's your experiences that are going to make what your education is. And so I don't want you to get so caught up in what classes am I going to take? What is the ranking that you miss out on the opportunity to say, I'm going to have a great experience based upon what's going to happen. And so when I think about my Morehouse experience, it does not happen without Spelman College across the street. And so this picture was a bittersweet moment. We celebrated the life of Myron Burney, who was one of our classmates who unfortunately was lost to a tragic accident. We raised over $100,000. There's an endowed scholarship at Morehouse in the memory of him. But when I look at this picture, there are judges, there are lawyers, there are doctors, there are entrepreneurs, people from all walks of life. And this was 25 years after we graduated. And so when I think about my experience, I think about what are the relationships I have formed. I've been on vacations with these people. I've actually today been on text with 3 or 4 of these people. The relationships that I have formed at my time at Morehouse College, along with Spelman, had some friends went to, Alabama State, got family who went to Florida A&M. My sister went to Howard. HBCUs are a part of the moral fabric of who I am. And so when I think about an HBCU experience, and I'm not just going to talk about Morehouse and Spelman and Howard, which, get a lot of recognition. I'm talking about the over 100 HBCUs around the country who have graduates who are doing great things in all professions. I want to, challenge you to say, what can these institutions offer me when I'm thinking about it? And the final thing that I'll say, since I don't have my representative with me, that as a proud HBCU graduate, currently, you may or may not know, they are looking at a Supreme Court case that may look at how race is viewed in college admission. So potentially next year, for those of you who are juniors, sophomores, or below, race may not be considered on your application. They're trying to take that away because they say, it gives people an unfair advantage. What I'm going to say is, for over 200 years, I know 100 schools who haven't cared what your race ethnicity was. They met you where you were at. They supported you. They built a family around you, and that our doors will continue to be open for the next 200 years. Thank you.
This is by far my favorite college counseling event of every year. So it's so much energy and it's so much fun to do. So these are our 2 authors that are here, and they're going to talk to you a bit about the recent book that they've just published. And Johns Hopkins University Press is the publisher. So we do have.
And they're here.
They are here. Hopkins. Oh, hi, Greg. All right. Greg Britton is here. He is their editor. So yay, go Greg. And Greg, you have a child at Friends. Graduated. And off to college. Okay, excellent. Very good. So so we have a local connection to these guys and to the book. So thank you, Hopkins Press, and thanks, Greg, for being here. That's awesome. All right, well, I gave you Tim's amazing, illustrious bio, and now I want to tell you a little bit about Shereen Herndon Brown, who's also joining us here on the stage. So Shereen is the founder and chief education officer of Strategic Admissions Advice, an educational consulting company specializing in college counseling curriculum creation for charter schools and school districts and personalized college advice coaching. Featured in periodicals like the New York Times, Washington Post, and Chicago Tribune, Shereen is a dynamic leader, educational strategist, emerging author, and speaker. His experiences in the field are unparalleled. As an educator for almost 20 years and an entrepreneur for over a decade, he has counseled many students and families through the often frustrating private school and college admissions maze. Inspiring and instructional, Shereen connects with anyone who needs an educational plan. His students have attended schools such as Dartmouth, Duke, Emory, Harvard, Stanford, Syracuse, University of Georgia, go Bulldogs, University of Miami, Michigan, UPenn, UVA, Texas, Austin, Vanderbilt, Yale, and many, many, many others. Before he set out on this purpose-filled assignment, he worked as an admissions officer at Georgetown, a guidance counselor at 2 private schools. He's a native of Brooklyn, New York, and a graduate of Westtown School. Wesleyan University is where he attended undergrad and earned a BA in English and African American Studies. And Middlebury College Breadloaf School of English is where he got his master's degree in English. In 2005, he was selected by the National Association of Independent Schools as an E.E. Ford Fellow for aspiring heads of school. Additionally, he has served on the Board of Trustees at La Cima Elementary Charter School, is a member of the Independent Educational Consulting Association, IECA, and the National Association of College Admissions Counseling, NACAC. Above all, Sherem is a husband, a father, and a distinguished gentleman of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you guys to lead us down the road.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Really appreciate that. I apologize. The lights are beating on me pretty hard, so I'm going to just pat myself a little bit a few times. But no, we're honored to be here. I don't know how to follow up what Tim did. Tim, thank you for that keynote speech. It was informative. And as someone who went to a predominantly white institution, I've always been, I'm not going to say the word jealous, but I will say that the HBCU experience is unique. My wife went to Howard University. Obviously, I spent a lot of time with Tim. And the familial love that HBCU graduates have for each other and for their HBCUs is remarkable. And I'm always impressed by it. Let's talk about our book a little bit. The Black Families Guide to College Admission, a conversation about black families, a conversation about education, parenting, and race. Oh boy, do you guys remember what was going on in summer 2020? What was going on? Talk to me. Social justice, I'm gonna stand up. Social justice? What was going on? Why were we having a social justice upheaval? Murder of George Floyd. The Central Park incident with the bird watcher. So we're home in the pandemic and we're all just kind of watching horrific events happening. And at the same time, I am watching Instagram, something called the Black at IG movement, where there were black students at independent schools documenting the micro and macro aggressions, thank you, that were happening to them and their reactions to it, and I was appalled. So I don't know if many of you remember this, but throughout the country, different independent schools, black students were talking about their experiences. And there was a common thread in that about college counseling. And as I went to independent schools for 12 years, Brooklyn Friends, Westtown School. I taught at Brooklyn Friends and Westtown School. I was a college counselor at Riverdale Country School and Trinity School. And I was hurt. I sent my kids to the Bullis School in Potomac. And I was hurt because I could see myself in these IG posts. I could see the students that I worked with, and I could see my own kids. So I called Tim, and I said, well, let me take a step back. I called Tim because I said to myself, there needs to be a college counseling book aimed at black students in private schools, because so many books were written by white males in the college admissions canon. Couple that with none of them were directly targeted towards what I will call the blackest generation. Black families who were not first generation or second generation families, who were making financial and sometimes cultural sacrifices to live in neighborhoods that weren't their own, myself included, because we wanted the best education for our kids and what was going to be the experience as they go through the college admissions process. I knew that Tim, having gone to Morehouse, he and I had known each other for about 10 years. And I said, if I call Tim and he wants to do this, we're going to have to do it. So when I dialed this number, I didn't really want him to pick up, right? You get a crazy idea in your head, you're like, yeah, let me share with somebody, but don't really share it because then you have to execute it. But he picked up, and immediately I said, Tim, with everything that's going on in this IG post, we should write a book for black families about college admissions. And he says, okay. So then it was on. So this is summer 2020, and for the next 2 years or 18 months, we worked diligently trying to identify what do we need to tell black families about the college admissions process. But at the same time, we didn't want to do it in a bubble. We did surveys with parents, over 300 parents. We talked to college counselors in public schools and private schools. And it was funny, Tim always tells a story, and I do want you to tell it, about what Brittany, his wife, who went to the University of Miami, So his wife went to predominantly white institution. He went to HBCU Morehouse. I went to predominantly white institution. My wife went to HBCU Howard. So we had this dynamic in our own homes with our own families, but we wanted to make sure that we were giving people information that they needed. And what did Brittany tell you?
So the first thing when I hung up the phone and said Shereen wants to write a book about college admission, she looked at me. She says, well, since y'all think y'all know everything, what's not going to happen is you two talk about what's best for my black child that you never met. So y'all need to get some more information other than just you all talking about what you think you all know.
And with that, very direct mandate, we set out on our journey. And I think what made our book really, really good was that, as you can see here, we are not the same, which goes back to what Tim was talking about earlier about blacks not being a monolith. Going back to that Hillman slide, he forgot to mention Freddie, right? So you got Whitley and you got Freddie. Freddie was wearing Birkenstocks, talking about peace save the whales, which was totally different than Whitley. And here, Tim and I, again, I'm from Brooklyn, New York. He's from Arlington, Texas. I went to private schools all my life. He went to public schools all his life, right? I went to PWI, HBCU. We both have twins, by the way. I have 2 girls. He has a boy and a girl. He likes to run the joke that I don't really like, but I'll say it anyway. I use a Mac. He uses a corny PC. But all that said, we know that we're not the same as writers, as parents, as black men. But what we do know is this college admission space really, really well from 2 different sides. I love being in the college application side. I was an English major. I like helping to brainstorm essays. I visited over 500 colleges and universities in my lifetime. I was meant to be on this side where he loves I was meant to be on the application side. He's meant to be on the admission side. So here we have this dynamic that really helped us to write something that we want just to be a resource. We want it to trigger conversations. We're not saying, as Brittany, his wife, said, we're not going to tell you what to do. As Tim said in his keynote, he can't tell the family that chose Emory over Morehouse what to do, but the conversation was happening. And this conversation happens in a lot of black homes. And thankfully, someone like Anne-Marie has these conversations with her students who are curious about HBCUs. We have options. We named our company Understanding the Choices. So that's all we want to do is really trigger the conversation.
And so as Shereen, kind of talked about this Black at IG, which kind of drove this. But the other things we wanted to do in this book is we wanted to kind of narrow the information gap. That as we were, putting together this book, we found some research that said roughly about 1/3 of black students get information about going to college inside their home. Versus white families that over 60% of the information they receive about going to college happens inside the home. So if there's that disproportion of information, where are these students getting their information? Are they getting it from, college counselors? Maybe they're in a large public school where that school counselor has a large caseload. And so we wanted to provide a resource so that they could have, information. And so we also wanted to combat undermatching, which is this idea that, black students are, not only black, but other students have aspirations to go to a certain type of school. And the counselor says, nah, I don't think you should apply to that school. You should just go to local community college. You should just go to the local state college. That's too aspirational for you. And, we wanted to, provide some context around that. Obviously, increase the awareness of HBCUs. Me being a graduate of an HBCU, often they're overlooked for any number of reasons. And there's a resurgence that's currently going on, and we'll get into that. But then, as we talked about, we wanted to redefine success. So those were some of the major things of why we went about writing the book.
And taking the pulse of black parents was important, right? We have friends now, we're both in our 40s. We have friends who are going through the process, friends entering elementary school, middle school, high school, applying to college, and they were picking our brains for free on what classes they should be taking or what college they should apply to. So we said, let's put something together that could comprehensively answer all their questions. So we're in the pandemic, everybody's home, so we're saying let's do some roundtables. We interviewed tons of people, and we wanted to know what are the important things that you think about for your child as you're considering education as early as kindergarten. What are you thinking about them? Do you know what classes they're taking in middle school that could potentially lead to what classes they take in high school? What are some of the priorities in this climate, remember it's 2020, that you're thinking about for college? And overwhelmingly, people talked about safety, cultural safety. And yes, Tim talked about the resurgence of HBCUs. More black families were, again, of my ilk. And when I say that, I'd gone to a PWI. Many of my friends who were from New York had gone to PWIs. And I think they were now curious about HBCUs for their kids, whether it be Beyonce's homecoming performance or Deion Sanders going to Jackson State. This new identity that HBCUs were having was very, very intriguing. And of course, like Tim mentioned in his keynote, they've been around for 200 years, but it was great to see them getting the love. NBA All-Star Game, so supporting HBCUs. That was great for us. Everybody okay? I hear that. Everybody's kids are here? Okay. So we thought that would be important, that we talk to families. We didn't want to write this book in a bubble, and the surveys that we got were really, really informative.
And so we also wanted to talk to college counselors as well, independent public schools, CBOs, get their impression as you've been working with black families. What are some of the trends? What are some of the conversations that you've had? These are some of the questions that we asked. And so what we wanted to do was create a comprehensive book to where this wasn't us talking about our experiences. We were coming from multiple perspectives. For the families we talked about, there were first generation, there were fourth generation, different socioeconomics, across West Coast, East Coast, you name it, HBCUs, PWIs, we had it. And then the same is true for counselors, independent schools, all different type of schools, because we wanted to get a good understanding. And once we got that information, we got to writing, and we thought we put together what we think is a great resource.
So if you see our table of contents, the book is broken up into 3 parts. Context really is the meat of what we've been talking about. What are black families talking about? What do black families need to know or be considering? Questions they need to be asking themselves as they approach the college application process, but particularly for their own child. X factors. Tim took the lead on that because that was about the X factors that happened in college admission. I was talking to someone at dinner about the difference in how black boys are viewed in the college application process versus black girls. I can, and Tim can, we both can argue that black boys, black young men, are some of the most valued people on college campuses. And so, why would you say that? Look at college football. Look at college basketball, right? These young men are so valued because they generate millions of dollars for the universities. So that was a chapter about X Factor and gender wars. The athletics piece. I have a son who's now a freshman in college, but when he was 15 years old, he was recruited to play baseball at the University of North Carolina. When you're 15 years old and you throw 90 miles an hour from the left-hand side, people are going to pay attention. That process of me being a doting father who loves baseball, my favorite son, meaning he's my only son, was an ordeal, because as happy as I was for him to get recruited and verbally committed to the University of North Carolina, and they put on their social media, he puts it on his social media, the pandemic hits, and North Carolina tells him, due to the pandemic, some of our older students now have more eligibility and we have to release you from your commitment. And they called him, not me. My 16-year-old child in the pandemic, already depressed.
So this was in the midst of writing. Writing stopped for a little bit. He fell apart.
I fell apart. This is my kid. My kid. And I'm thinking about getting a second home down in North Carolina. It's 5 hours away. I'm driving to go see my kid play ball. And gone. Did I think another school would pick him up and, of that same caliber? Of course I did. He'd be fine. He's fine. He's a freshman at the University of Memphis. He's doing great. But it was not horrific. I don't want to sound like sour grapes, but I want you to know that when you go into the college athletic process, all eyes open. Okay?
So he's being, he's not being truthful with you, let me say. No, because this happened, and he was, I forget which chapter, and he wanted to write about this experience. Well, and what he thought of North Carolina in their decision. And I said, Shireen, we cannot put that in a book. You cannot talk about one of the top schools in the country for whatever reason in that way.
However,
and it be in print.
They told my son, we, have no more availability given COVID. Okay, got it. 2 weeks later, they picked up his teammate. His teammate don't look like me or him. So yes, did I write in the book before Tim omitted it, took it out? North Carolina is a racist institution that violates. No. But again, I don't want to sound like sour grapes as much as I want to educate people on, I love athletics, but if you think about it long and hard, the coaches move freely. The coaches make millions of dollars. If they cut your kid, stuff happens. So we want you to approach the process all eyes wide open. Again, learn from my experience and my mistakes. And then the process, which I took the lead on. Yes, I own an educational consulting company. I'm an independent consultant. And what that means is that I've known the college admissions process for a long time, and there's certain timetables in which things should happen. So I pretty much collated all the information I have in my head and different timelines and things that we thought would be very important for black families to execute the process. Thankfully, honestly, if you go to Bryn Mawr, Anne-Marie's put together a really cool booklet about the timeline of the college process. I did look at it after we visited off. I was like, oh, this is pretty good. We should have taken this. It's too late. The book's already published. But we do believe that, say it, Tim. I can't do it.
No, please. You're on a roll.
Tim believes. No, we believe that black families need to engage in this process a little earlier. I know that's a big sweeping generalization, and we're not a monolith, but we have found too many of us wait till junior year, senior year to start thinking about the college process. And that is, in our belief, a disadvantage. Not that we want you to accelerate it and start, trying to pile onto your resume when you're 4 years old. But we want you to understand that the sequencing of courses that you may take in middle school might affect what you need to take in high school. If you're looking at selective college and universities, what are their admissions requirements and what are the prerequisites of those courses so that you can take them in high school? Having information is good. Understanding that other people are aware of how this works and you not understanding is to your detriment. So we don't want people coming to the game late. Again, we have brilliant friends who all of a sudden become oblivious as parents to how this process works. Hence why we wrote the book.
So as we go about this process, there are 4 things that we think are very important to talk about. Cost being the most important. Through our conversations, we have found there are a lot of families who don't talk about money until the student gets admitted to school, and that's too late. Because students are putting together lists, students are doing the work, and then they go get admitted to these schools, and all of a sudden the parents are having discussions, we don't know if we can, have the money to send you there. So we want those conversations to happen very, very early. Location, location, where does it need to be? Does it need to be close? Does it need to be far? One of the mothers we interviewed in California, she was very adamant. She's like, my daughter is going to be a recruit for volleyball. She wants to play at an SEC school, and we are open to all SEC schools, but not Mississippi. I am not sending my daughter from California to Mississippi. Okay, that's her choice. All right, so we want you to think about these things. Academic major, we all know that your major is going to change. 75% of students change their major. So yes, you want to have, an area, I want to go in, I want to study biology. Okay, what if you change your mind? What if you decide I don't like blood? Then all of a sudden you might need to do something else, all right? So we want students to have 2 or 3 other different areas that in case they need to pivot, they have that opportunity. And then career choice, what opportunities? Are there internships? Are there opportunities for them outside the classroom to help prepare for them? And so these are 4 guiding principles that we think should drive this process, but obviously there are other things.
So as you're preparing to apply it again, if you go to Bryn Mawr or Gilman or Roland Park School and both Friends of School of Baltimore, they're giving you this information, okay? So this is going to be a little bit redundant, but building your college list, we believe, starts with the cost, location, major, career. The major and career piece is important to me because I think students need to apply to college with intentionality, knowing what your strengths and interests are, so ideally you're on the 4-year plan, not the 9-year plan, right? Now, does that mean that, like Tim said, things can't change, you can't pivot? Of course not. But we do think that there are tools that can help with assessing what students' strengths and interests are so they can apply to college and be very intentional. We are big on this. Work with your school counselor. I get, people, clients all the time say, well, we want an independent counselor because we don't like our college counselor. And I'll tell them, then you're looking at the wrong guy. You need to engage your school counselor. I've been a school counselor. I want to ideally talk to your school counselor. So please, please, please connect with your school counselor as you're starting to apply, talking through the testing options. We're in this test optional environment still, or at least to an extent. Certain schools, state universities of Georgia and Florida are requiring tests. MIT is requiring standardized tests. Caltech is not. Connect you with teacher recommendations. Please consider the academic options you may have. And hopefully they're from disparate disciplines. Having an English teacher and a history teacher write for you is probably not ideal because they're probably gonna say the same things about you read well and you write well versus having a math teacher and an English teacher write if you feel like they've, can speak positively about you. And that doesn't mean you just get an A in their course, but it's something that you've trying hard, you're taking initiative, or you're meeting with them during office hours. Sometimes those are the best recommendations. Creating timelines, understanding what the policies and procedures are of your college counseling office and how to best kind of utilize tools like SCORE or Naviance or College Kickstart. You guys have a wealth of resources. Writing essays as an English major, that is my kind of, my specialty in terms of helping students to brainstorm things.
Are there any essays that you just don't necessarily?
You gonna make me pull that out?
Yeah.
All right.
Give it to the people.
Give it to the people. On December 30th, 2019, I got a phone call from a family friend. Happened to be my anniversary too, so I really shouldn't have picked up the phone, but I did stupidly. My wife is angry with me. But she said, I didn't want to call you earlier, January 1st are the deadlines, but I'm reading my son's essay for the first time, and I don't think he should write about what he wrote about. I was like, what are you talking about? She says, my son has written about his love of hip hop and basketball, and his college guidance counselor said that is okay. And I said, I love hip hop and I love basketball just like the next man. But a black male writing about hip hop and basketball doesn't make him sound any different. And the fact that his school counselor rubber stamped this was an independent school woman, an independent school family, was alarming. Thankfully, his attorney mother flagged it and said, we're gonna start this from scratch on New Year's Eve. Because she had invested too much time and money for him to be another basketball-loving, hip-hop-loving black boy. So the essay writing process has to be something unique. And I don't say that as a sweeping generalization to hurt anybody's feelings. But you cannot be stereotypical. And that's important that I say that. Thank you, Tim. And exploring scholarships. Yes, we all hear I'll let you talk about that one.
Well, I did just think, it's important to explore scholarships because, nobody wants to pay for college, all right? College costs a lot. Nobody, regardless of how many resources you have, nobody says, oh, I want to write an $80,000 check, all right? So if you can get any scholarships, we encourage everybody to apply for financial aid. Circumstances change. The school can step right in there and have money for you. So explore scholarships, financial aid are very, very important parts.
So some of the key takeaways, as you can see from the book, we are very, very honored that Johns Hopkins University Press partnered with us to do this. It was an arduous, or has been an arduous process. Tim and I, we call ourselves a bad marriage. I don't think it's a bad marriage, but it's definitely a marriage. I spend a lot more time with him than my own kids.
It's bad.
But it's because we're so different and because we're so passionate about wanting to help. Again, there are some great books about college admissions out there, but we, to our knowledge, had not found one that was written by two people like us, not just because we're black, but the independent school versus the public school, the HBCU versus the PWI, the married to the other HBCU or PWI, both having twins. So we wanted to make sure that we gave you guys the key takeaways that I cannot see because I can't put mine on my glasses, but as you can see them.
So we wanted that balanced, student goals with parents' aspirations. What we really have found in a lot of discussions is parents are very aspirational and want their children to go to great schools, but the children may not want to go to those schools. The children may not have the tools, and so we want to have a balanced list. Obviously, we talked about, applying early, keeping an open mind. My soapbox for this was getting information from people who are at the school, college counselors, admissions officers, somebody in the field. Too many times people get on what I call the wine and cheese circuit. They go to a party and they say, oh, such and such child got into this college. And then they want to follow the playbook of that child. You don't know why that child got in. You don't know what went into the decision that went about that. So if you follow that playbook, it may not work out for you. So get information from schools. Go get on campuses for visits. Ask direct questions that, are going to be pertinent to your situation and not others. And then obviously we want to continue to redefine success.
Next slide. Questions. We wrote this book for y'all. And when I say that, we wanted to write it for black families, whether you're first generation or ninth generation college. But we wanted to write it for you because we believe that we have things in common with you as parents. We have things in common with you, whether you want HBC or PWI. We have something in common with you, independent school or public school. We will find a touch point to connect. But we wanted to make sure that we get this opportunity, thank you again, Bryn Mawr School, to meet people where they're at, to spark conversations, and to make sure that your curiosities about college, that you're getting all your questions answered. So hopefully someone out there has a question for us. Again, we're very proud of our work, but more importantly, we're very proud of you, students, for kind of going on your educational journey.
You all may not choose the answer. On the case study, I was just looking at this particular section, and I haven't had a chance to read the entire book. The answer may be in the preceding chapter, but it says that one was admitted, as you know, one was waitlisted, and two were denied. And I was looking to quickly find which was which. What occurred of the four case studies. Well, of course, you have the answer. Are you sharing it or
So
Explain to them what it is.
yeah, no, so we don't have the answer. We don't have the answer. The exercise is for you, the reader, to review, look over the credentials, and then you decide what you think. And the exercise happens at a lot of schools, and a lot of mission officers do these case studies, because if we divided up this room, everybody's going to admit somebody. Everybody's going to deny somebody different. Because we wanted to show was in this process, especially if you're looking at selective schools, is so subjective. It depends upon what you are valuing as an institution. Some are going to value other things more than others. And so what we really want to see is, like, some people say, oh, this person has a high test score. Oh, this person has a high GPA. But then what curriculum did they take? What are they doing outside the classroom? There are lots of things that are involved. So the answer is, if you got with 5 people, y'all are going to come up with 5 different answers. And that's just to kind of give people insight to what the college admission process looks like.
Any other questions?
I'm wondering about college visits. How early would you say? I know you said that black families as a whole we need to start early, but when do you think is ideal for starting that process?
No.
So, college visit, actually putting your child's feet on college campus. Anytime you visit a relative in another state, check out a college. Go to the college nearby. By now, if you live in Baltimore, you should see everything from Johns Hopkins to Goucher to Townsend to Morgan. Drive down to College Park. Go to UMBC. Take advantage anytime. Again, my kids, because they're my kids, have visited my son maybe 75 colleges in his life. Because in every city we visit, we touch something. We go to Orlando, go to Disney World, we go see Rollins. We go to Tech, we go to Houston to see his friend, we go to see Rice and UT Austin. So anytime you're in a different city, as you're curious about colleges, again, the operative word is curious. Your kid may hate it, and you yuck, I don't want to go here, it's too big, it's too small, whatever. At least they have an opinion now. So do I think once the high school begins, should they be visiting colleges, on long weekends ideally? Sure. I would love for you to come to the junior process, starting your junior year with Bryn Mawr or any of your other independent schools, having visited maybe 5 colleges, right? At different points throughout high school, not saying all into one week. I think sometimes it becomes a blur, but don't just rely on spring break of the junior year and, summer of the between junior and senior year to visit colleges. I think you need to get an idea of what your kid likes and doesn't like in order to help them make informed decisions.
And actually, we have a virtual program we're doing Sunday at 5:30 when we're talking about college visits.
Shameless plug. Go to understandingthechoices.com.
So how should we consider funding in like certain majors or programs when considering PWI versus
I mean, so undergraduate financial aid is essentially the same. You know, depending upon the school, obviously the FAFSA, the free application for student application, which is emphasis on free, you complete that. There are some private schools that have the CSS profile. Your parents, guardians are gonna complete that. Based upon your household income, they're going to provide money. Outside of that financial aid that the school offers, that's when you have to look at additional scholarships. So that's going to be true for the undergraduate program. Once you get into graduate schools, then there's a specific amount of money you can look at. But you know, your funding for your undergraduate experience is going to come from you completing your parents and guardians completing the FAFSA and the CSS profile, depending upon the school. And so we talk a lot in this process about what the students need to do. Financial aid, that's on you parents and guardians, all right? Y'all have to meet deadlines. You have to apply for taxes in a timely fashion because the students cannot submit that information. So even if you are not with your parents, the other parent, if y'all not together, y'all need to get together and agree. We need to, turn this information so this school can establish how much money is needed. I can't tell you how many times that because parents are not together, they don't disagree, they hold up the financial aid process, which ends up costing the student money. So you have to turn this information in. And then the last thing I'll say is colleges, they don't care about your business, all right? I've been doing this 20 years. All of it's messy. All they want to know is how much money is available to support this student in college. You know, that's all they want to know. They're not saying, oh, they ain't together. Oh, they do this for work. Oh, what? They don't. It doesn't matter. But you have to get it in order for these students to get good financial aid packages.
I can also answer the question a little differently as well of, yes, the numbers are the numbers based upon your family's, estimated family contribution, right? They can go to any web page and go to a net price calculator and figure out what the approximate number that they will get in grants, loans, etc. However, if money's a big deal, again, and you mentioned PWIs, that's what you said. I've had experiences where black males in particular can go to a school like Bates College in Maine, where there aren't a lot of black males, and Bates will shower you with money. Granted, you're a good student. Granted, you're prepared for their challenging liberal arts curriculum. That is to your advantage financially, but is it to your advantage culturally? I don't know you and I don't know what you want to do, but that's something to consider that I always introduce to families of. Most selective PWIs have resources that most HBCUs do not, as per financial aid. Thus, as a family, cost should always be part of the conversation so that ideally you don't graduate with exorbitant amounts of debt. You might have to put some skin in the game and take a loan or two out. Okay, welcome to the real world. But I don't want your parents ideally taking out Parent Plus loans, right? Getting a second mortgage, dipping into the retirement. Then we got to go, whoa, 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 whoa. Who's giving me the most money so that we can, it's 4 years. It's going to go by quick. So then graduate school and life can happen. You can buy a home at 25 or 30, not 55.
given the pool of resources, can a student who's thinking very locally, PWI versus HBCU, when they have to kind of think at the very beginning gate, I may have to think I'm going to have to be paying more to go to this 4-year historical black school than a PWI?
Sure. Sure.
Yes, sir.
Thank you all for writing, first of all, writing the book. I kind of feel like this is our generation to read book.
I like that. Stolen.
So, first of all, thank you for that. Second of all, my question kind of moves in the realm of, as you all are developing a financial plan, how should we look at community colleges to kind of offset? I know typically we don't think of community colleges playing into the 4-year piece, but oftentimes if a kid goes to an independent school, right, the plan is considered to a 4-year school. But in your research, have you all seen anybody using the community college to kind of leapfrog, cut costs, and then move into the 4 years?
Let me answer that real quick, then you can add on, please. I could almost argue that that's the right way to go for two reasons, not just for the financial piece, but it allows them to take some core classes, to get some of the core classes out the way per se, get a better understanding of who they are. 18 to 20 is a very different time in their lives. And there are some colleges, when I worked at Georgetown, we had a relationship with Northern Virginia Community College where we had to admit a certain amount of students annually. It could be argued that it's easier to get into that better university later when the pool isn't as robust with all the first-year highly selective applicants. So again, no shame in anybody's game when it comes to money. And we did meet with the family up in Rockland County who talked about their desire to consider community college for their kids because many of their neighbors were sending their kids to trade schools. Not everybody's supposed to, go to four-year school, become a lawyer, doctor, whatever, PhD. We need people to fix air conditioners. So the bottom line is you got to know who your kid is, know what your family's pockets look like, and then make the best decision for them.
What I will say is there are a lot of families that do go that route for the financial reason. They say, I can, go to this community college for 2 years. I can save it a significant amount of money. And then if they do well, they can transfer to almost any school in the country. The only drawback to that is at most community colleges, there is not a residential component. That travel back and forth and not having that communal nature on it, research shows the probability of them graduating in 4 years is significantly lower than starting on a traditional 4-year campus. So, obviously, I know lots of families that, go to 2-year school in Georgia, transfer to UGA, graduate from UGA, go Dogs, and never say what they did the first 2 years. They never mentioned it. But just know by the numbers, those students don't graduate in 4 years at the same rate. So you are taking a risk. It takes a lot of discipline because life happens, differently than when you are on a traditional campus and you are consumed with everybody else. You go to community college, you got people who are working, you got people who are retired just taking classes. It's just a totally different environment. And so you just have to take that in consideration.
Nights like this.
I think this is great, and I'm hoping that it's not just a sidestep because it's February. When we are moving forward into that push, how do we increase the conversations with our independent school counselors to say, hey, as you were looking at the University of Maryland, this program also exists in more countries?
Yeah, so just very quickly, because we want to answer other questions. One, if you all are at these, independent schools, these conversations happen. You come to the conversation. We want to consider the schools like it's a conversation, but also in defense of the college counselors, there's some parents that if they offer an HBCU, why are you offering me an HBCU? Do you just offer me because I'm black? And they're all put by that. We were in California. There were college counselors who were scared to offer HBCUs because the families would say, why do you think that my child can only go to HBCU? You don't think my child can go anyway? So it cuts both ways. But as the conversation happens, make sure that you come to conversations, hey, these are the schools we're thinking about. And then it's an open conversation.
I want to add on to that. I appreciate both of you guys. I love your work. My question is very similar. I won't mention the school that my two daughters attend. There's a great article written out about what black high school students are being told by their college counselors. And one of the challenges we face at the school that my daughters attended was the swaying of an HBCU. And so there's quite often if a counselor does not have enough information about HBCUs, and the parents who are pro HBCU for the entire family, and if we're saying this is where our daughter wants to attend school, why are we still talking about these other schools over here? And so the article goes on to share that information about that's happening more often. Of course, we don't have a huge amount of counselors who are African American, people of color. How does a parent sort of circumvent or deal with those challenges when they're very specific on this is where our child wants to go, and this is where we want to support our child to attend those schools? Because I remember when my daughter had her list, she visited a school where she's at Texas Southern now. We came back and her
So I'm going to say, obviously, you could always buy the book for your school counselor and give it to them. I mean, honestly, that's one. But there's also, I think the word circumvent is probably the wrong way to approach it. I think we still got to have the adults in the room. Parents and school counselor are supporting and partnering to help the child. Again, it's not going to be an easy conversation because, again, admittedly, a lot of white school counselors don't know a lot about HBCUs unless they take the initiative to hold nights like these or visit them. And we talked to counselors, and white counselors, and they were like, the only time I visited Howard when NACAC, our national conference, was in D.C. When I visited, New Orleans for our national conference, I saw Xavier and Dillard. So again, it's just not a go-to for many, but we're hoping to raise the awareness and the consciousness so that more people take initiative. So I don't want anyone to circumvent anything. I think as a parent, you have every right to encourage your kid to do what you want her to do. But at the same time, I think it's ideally incumbent upon you to also hope that the school counselor will engage in dialogue that's productive. I understand there could be some animosity sometimes, but I've yet to meet a school counselor who doesn't want the best for a kid. You just may have a different way to get there.
Yes,
I just
sir.
want to wait real quick. It's 8 o'clock. Are we good on time, Anne Marie?
I think we should do one more question, then we're going to hightail it out and do some more books.
Okay. So again, thank you all for coming. We're going to answer one more question, but we will definitely answer questions out there. We'll be signing books. Thank you so much for purchasing books, and we'll answer as many questions as we can out there as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your candor with regard to your son being an athlete and things not working.
Oh, no, they worked out fine. He now plays for a Division I school, which I pay nothing for, and his coach is black. We're winning.
Just that whole situation that you're talking to. So what do you say to parents who are in the independent school where these students are pretty competitive and they're not an athlete and they're going to school and their parents are second generation? What do you say to them who may be in the middle of the path of that very competitive environment in terms of differentiating themselves or navigating through the process to go to these schools and get scholarships, or what do you tell them so that they can not be can be unique and not be stereotypical I guess athlete,
Or applicant.
or applicant, but be someone who might be there in school because they're smart.
So again, when we first set out to write the book, I'll speak for myself, was angry at the IG posts and the independent school culture these black kids were writing about their negative experiences, and that hurt me, student, parent, former faculty member. I felt that there needed to be a book targeted toward non-first generation black families that could discuss the things that have been changing in the college admissions landscape over 20, 30 years. The book became something different. It became a resource for anybody who picks it up. So there are plenty of first generation families who are picking up the book and finding it tremendously useful, particularly the timeline. So if you're going to look at the timeline, which is in the process section, expectation for success we call it, if you follow that and ask the right questions of your school counselor, there's the parent responsibilities, there's student responsibilities, and there are questions to ask your school counselor. I hope that information leads to more information gathering so that the kid can then learn early on, I need to start doing things that are unique to me to help me distinguish myself, to be the best authentic person I can be. But yes, you need to amplify that authenticity as you apply to college as an applicant. So again, there are steps to it and there are levels to it. And I think it's important not to put it all on the school counselor, but also on the family to share that responsibility, not the blame, share the responsibility to have information gathered, have information shared, so that your kid can find their unique greatness, their unique brilliance, and then apply to the right schools for the right reasons. We do not believe, Tim and I do not believe that just because you go to an independent school and you're black and you're smart, that you should go to Harvard, Princeton, Yale. We met a kid today, I think a faculty member, whose kid's going to Claflin in South Carolina. Good for them. We got someone going to Davidson in North Carolina. Good for them. Oberlin, Kenyon, Rice, Middlebury, wherever it could be. Paul Quinn in Dallas. We want kids going to the right schools for the right reasons, because now you've opened yourself up to opportunities that you may not have known. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that the book allows you to ask the right questions, plus gives you a timeline to hopefully have engaged in informative conversation with your school counselor.
Thank you both so much for this book talk and talk in general. I just got a text from a colleague who's in the audience, and she said, "You've got to bring them back next year for the HBCU night too." So I think we really appreciate everything that you guys have done. So let's give them another hand, and then we'll receive. Yeah. All right. Thank you.